Belmont Stakes Racing Festival is upon us, and it is a plethora of Grade 1s, 8 Grade 1s on Saturday's card, including the 153rd running of the Belmont Stakes. But we're going to take a very brief look at the other 7 Grade 1s to be run on Saturday. Best way to play them and all the races through NYRA Bets. Head over to NYRABets.com. If you're not a member, use the promo code Belmont25. We will match up to up to $200 of your initial deposit, as well as give you a free $25 bet. We're going to kind of go out of order and a little herky-jerky, but we'll cover all of those Grade 1 races, and we'll start with the Resorts World Casino Manhattan. And this is a rematch of the horses that ran 1-1 in the Turf Classic at Churchill Downs, and that's Colonel Liam and Domestic Spending. And it was definitely a tale of two trips. Colonel Liam had an absolutely beautiful trip. He's got more speed than Domestic Spending. He saved ground, he angled out in the stretch. It could not have possibly gone better. Domestic Spending, not so much. Compromised by the slow pace, caught in traffic, had to burst his way through horses, and when the two front runners drift in the stretch, he had to angle out to go around them. And yet he still managed to dead heat Colonel Liam. No knock on Colonel Liam. He's a terrific racehorse, having won a couple of Grade 1s already this year. Domestic Spending just ran a better race, and he'd also beaten him at Saratoga, though Colonel Liam didn't have the best trips that day. If you like Colonel Liam, you think the 1.25 miles suits him more than the 1.25 miles suits Domestic Spending. If you like Domestic Spending, you watch that race and you just think he's the better horse. The question is, who are the other major players in the race? Well, let's take a look at the Man of War, which will run a week later than that, the Grade 1 Man of War here at Belmont Park, where Channel Cat somehow held off Gufo. Channel Cat did all the dirty work. He fought for the lead on the front end. They went a fast pace. Gufo sat a perfect trip, a great ride from Joel Rosario. He angled out, and he does what Gufo does. He lost a photo. Gufo has now lost a photo to Domestic Spending in the Saratoga Derby. He lost a photo to Domestic Spending in the Hollywood Derby. And now he lost a photo to Channel Cat in the Man of War. Are you starting to notice a pattern here? He just doesn't seem to be able to get up in these races, but obviously is good. And by not winning this race, he gets a big weight break. So Gufo may be the biggest threat to Colonel Liam and Domestic Spending. I prefer Domestic Spending. There are other players in there as well, 10 horses in all, in a race that should feature a fair pace. The Acorn, another Grade 1 on the card a little bit earlier in the day, features the horse that took a tough beat to Todd Pletcher's Malathot in the Kentucky Oaks. We'll take a look at that Kentucky Oaks now. Clairiere, I was hoping she'd play in here. She's not going to play, but Search Results is back, and Search Results, she ran a winning race. She just wasn't good enough. She was second best in this race, and there's no embarrassment to be second best to the undefeated winner of this race. The reality is she's better than the horses she's facing in this race, and she drew very well on the outside. She's got the speed to keep herself in position, and if the pace gets hotter, she can stalk, as she showed in this race, and run effectively. Search Results looking for that first Grade 1 win. She is the horse to beat off her second-place finish in the Kentucky Oaks. But there were a couple other horses that ran earlier that day at Churchill Downs, and they are Obligatory and Day Out of the Office. Obligatory won the race. As we take a look at the 8 bells, she won it coming from way back behind a very, very fast pace. Day Out of the Office finished second. She ran the better race. Day Out of the Office was coming into her first race this year. She sat close to the fast pace where the through speeds collapsed. Now, the two horses that were sitting right behind her in 4th and 5th, they actually ran reasonably well in this race, so I don't think it was a total meltdown, but Day at the Office was the hero of here, if not the victor. She's got to deal with Miss Brazil, who's talented inside of her. Will the pace get too hot? Will that make it easier for Search Results to pick her up? Search Results is the one to beat, but if she loses, Day Out of the Office, who won the Frizette, going the same mile distance at Belmont last year, she's the one who's likely to beat her. It's an excellent match with them. Obligatory Travel Column will try to seek redemption. We'll see how the Acorn works out. The Longines Just a Game. This is the biggest field of the day. 12 horses have signed on to run 1 mile, and Chad Brown has a very, very strong hand in here. And we'll take a look at Blowout. And Blowout beat New York Girl and Zofel in a blanket finish in the Distaff Turf Mile at Churchill Downs last time. And Blowout is a very dangerous player in this Longines Just a Game, not just because she's good, but also because she has speed, and there really isn't an abundance of speed in the Just a Game. Now, Sweet By and By got involved in the pace that hurt Blowout back in the Noble Damsel, and maybe she'll be forwardly placed. Noble Damsel is one of the ones who can win for Chad Brown, as is Tama here, who can win this race and has a big win at a mile at Belmont last fall. She was hurt by the slow pace last time out in the Jenny Wiley. But Pocket Square, the Juddmonte runner coming from a victory at Keeneland, could try to do exactly what Antono did for Chad Brown and Juddmonte in this race a few years back. Win a Rallance race at Keeneland, first time in the country, and come back with a very impressive win in the Just a Game. This was an easy victory. She absolutely cruised by the field. She didn't beat much, and the competition is getting much sterner in the Just a Game. But this is something that Chad Brown has done well before, and he may do well here with Pocket Square. Chad Brown holds an extraordinarily strong hand. He's even got Regal Glory, who's a player as well. 4 runners in here. Every single one of them can win the Longines Just a Game. Let's move on. There's still much more Grade 1 action. Let's take a look at the Grade 1 Woody Stevens. And how about a rematch of these 2 horses from the Pat Day Mile at Churchill Downs? And that's Jackie's Warrior and Dream Shake. What a show they put on Derby Day in this race, battling down the stretch. There was a fast pace, and they never stopped running. And we've seen Jackie's Warrior run very well at Belmont before with his blowout win in the Champagne over Reinvestment Risk, which was basically a carbon copy of his blowout win in the Hopeful. He's fast, he's good, he's back. This race did not get a fast Beyer speed figure, a figure of only 91, but a lot of that may have to do with the fast pace. And I expect both of these horses to be players, and I think they're very dangerous. The question is, how fast is the pace? You throw in Drain the Clock, who's run 5 of 7 races, including our Bayshore in his last start, and we'll take a look at Drain the Clock winning our Bayshore. Is he going to get involved in the pace? Is he good enough? I don't think he's good enough, but he could be a pace factor, and I think it sets up the potential for there to be a quick pace, and that could help the one Nova Rags, who cuts back in distance, but is he good enough? Or it could help Caddo River. And I like Caddo River's chances for Brad Cox, who has very good numbers. He's the 30% trader with 162 horses cutting back from a route to a sprint in the dirt over the last 5 years with a positive ROI. And Caddo River, I think if he's going to be good enough to win Grade 1s, it'll be in races like the Woody Stevens and the Alan Jerkins at Saratoga. And I'm taking a shot with him on the outside to pick up the pieces. And is there any race that's bigger than the Hillendale Met Mile? And that race will be run 2 races before the Belmont Stakes. The Hillendale Met Mile is a small but select field, and Knicks Go is the biggest name in here. Here's Knicks Go winning the Pegasus earlier this year. This was after winning the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. And Knicks Go, when he's good, he is very good. He had to deal with Charlatan last time. Well, Charlatan's not playing in the Met Mile, so Knicks Go decided if he's not there, I'll be there, and he's the worst to beat. Can anybody run with him early? Can anybody run with him late? I guess Lexitonian in some ways is the biggest threat to him on the front end early in this race. Knicks Go is going to be very, very tough to beat. I know he didn't run as well as some expected him to run in Saudi Arabia. That was a 1 1/8. That was against Charlatan. Different story here. He is the one to beat in this Hillendale Met Mile, but he has a major rival down on the rail, and that's Mischievous Alex. His win in our Carter back at Aqueduct was a definitive performance, a 109 Beyer speed figure, and he absolutely blew the field away. I guess one of the questions for him is he coming into this Met Mile as well as he came into the Carter? There's been talk that he was working very well before that race, and while he's working well now, maybe not as well. If this Mischievous Alex shows up, it is a major, major horse race between him and Knicks Go. And there are others in here as well. Dr. Post is coming in after a nice win in the Westchester for Todd Pletcher. By My Standards is coming in off a prep win down at Oaklawn Park, and he certainly ran races, including a second in the Whitney, fast enough to give him a chance. And how about Silver State, who's looking for his 6th win in a row? And I like Silver State cutting back to the 1-turn mile after winning the 1 1/8 Oaklawn Handicap around 2 turns. Now listen, he cannot get a better trip and ride than he got from Ricardo Santana in the Oaklawn Handicap. It was a blanket finish, and he won because of his trip. But he's good, and it just seems like he's getting better with every start. And now he cuts back to the 1 turn after getting the 2 turns in the Oaklawn Handicap. I think he's going to run a big race, but can he run a big enough race to beat Mischievous Alex and Knicks Go? These are all questions that will be answered in the Hillendale Met Mile. It is a good one. And speaking of good ones, let's talk about the Grade 1 Ogden Phipps, which is being run much earlier in the card. This came up an excellent race. Now, Monomoy Girl's on the sidelines, but basically, we've got all the big names besides her, and let's talk about Latruska, who beat Monomoy Girl last time out, and Swiss Skydiver, who finished well behind in the Apple Blossom. Latruska was brilliant in winning this race, coming back on, and she has really stepped up her game since they took the blinkers off. I think that has made a significant difference for her. She is going to be tough to beat in here with Irad Ortiz. I think Swiss Skydiver is going to run much better. Never in a comfortable position down the inside, maybe not the best place to be. Not really clear on that, but she never really got in a rhythm. She's bounced back from bad race before. She ran too well in the Beholder Mile to completely dismiss her. I love the rider change, Jose Ortiz. I think Swiss Skydiver and Latruska are big players, and so is She Dares the Devil. She Dares the Devil beat Latruska 2 races back on the front end in a slow pace. Last time she ran, she had a somewhat workmanlike win at La Treyenne. We'll take a look at that. The horse she beat, though, on Votante, came back to win a lesser race at Churchill last weekend, and she improved her Beyer figure 10 points. She Dares the Devil and Latruska, neither one of these horses can afford to let the other one get away. The question is, how fast will the pace be? Will that help Swiss Skydiver? But Swiss Skydiver before will be placed too, so she's not necessarily hurt by the pace, and I think Jose Ortiz is going to be aggressive with her. Can that help a horse like Bonnie South, the other Brad Cox horse, maybe to improve in her second start this year and pick up the pieces? Unfortunately, Valiant's not going to play for Todd Pletcher, but this is an excellent running of the Grade 1 Ogden Phipps. And finally, time to almost take a deep breath. The Jack Pocket Jaipur, the last Grade 1 we'll talk about in this preview. At 6 furlongs, a big field going to post in this race. 12 signed on, 11 to run on the turf. And we'll start with last year's winner, Alexandra. The Alexandra that won this race last year, as we take a look at her, she'd be tough in here. She doesn't need a fast pace, and pace is a real question in here, and we'll talk about that in a moment because there isn't much pace. The problem I have with her is I don't think she's the same horse that she was last year, and losing Joel Rosario, who's ridden her so brilliantly, and when you have the kind of posing kick she does, you've got to time it personally, and Joel Rosario, he figured out how to do it to a T. She won't get as much pace. She's not as good. I don't like her. The pace horse in here is the favorite, Bound for Nowhere. He might be in a position to never look back in this race. Joel Rosario's on him. He's the one to beat. Quickly, let's take a look at a couple other contenders that ran 1-2 in a sprint, the Churchill Downs Turf Sprint, the day before the Kentucky Derby, and that is Sambaye and Fast Boat. They both got very good trips. They battled down to the wire. I think they're both players in here, but I prefer others. I think Gregorian Chan is dangerous. I think the number 10 Stubbins is dangerous in this race as well, but this Jaipur is going to be a war. Maybe Bound for Nowhere is the best horse. Maybe he's too fast for him early, and they're never going to catch him, but I think it's a more competitive race than that. The Jaipur, one of 8 Grade 1s on Saturday's Belmont Stakes card. We talked about 7 here. There are more races. There is great action. The best way to play it is through NYRABets. Head over to NYRABets.com. If you're not a member, use the promo code Belmont25. We will match $200 of your initial deposit and give you a $25 free bet. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the Belmont Stakes Racing Festival.